Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. We're positively into another week. The Orioles are coming home. Let's see, we're through Belmont. We got some mini camp happening next week, and it's summer season. And with Heritage Fair being back on, I want to give a big shout out to Darren, the Sausage King at Di Pasquale's for hooking me up. I got sausage everywhere. I promised him a shout out. If you know Darren the Sausage King, well, you know Darren the Sausage King, and he's a longtime listener here at WNST, so my thanks to him. Friday, I will not be eating sausage. I will be eating shrimp salad, probably fried oysters, and definitely a crab cake. We're going to be giving the Back to the Future scratch-offs away, courtesy of the Maryland Lottery. We will be at Fade Lee's in Lexington Market. And then next Tuesday, we're going to be at the Y in Randallstown doing the pool opening for Juneteenth with John Hoey. I've been wanting to do this show for a long, long time, so I'm looking forward to that. Also going to be at Reader's Crab House later on in the month in Reisterstown, and then making our way to Eldersburg with my pal Mike McKelvin out at 1623 Brewing. That's happening in July. And then we're doing our 27 favorite things to eat. And I outed myself about the donuts over at Pennsylvania Dutch Market on Friday. Luke, be honest with me. Have you ever had a maple bacon donut?
You know what? I think I have.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
pretty
good
I'm
for
pretty
you.
sure I have.
Yeah, well, then you know what's good. You know what's up. You know what's
Yeah.
righteous.
Yeah.
I would say that. Luke Jones is here. He is bored with the Orioles, but we're watching anyway. The other team did have nice uniforms, and it was a minor league park where every fly ball was. Jim Palmer was quick to point out, there's not a second deck here, and the wind's blowing.
Hmm.
Luke, how are you? I'm going to see you on Friday. You've got football things. You and I had a really compelling argument about whether Lamar Jackson should be at practice or not. Was shocked by your point of view, and I did not put you up to that as your boss friend. Whatever I am at this point, you took the side you took. So I'll continue to shame you thusly, but nonetheless,
I'll continue
on
to
the
say OTAs don't matter. Anyway, go ahead.
practice, we're talking practice. Um, all right, man. They're coming home. Parts of it are a little better. Rutschman looks awake, in general, but the record's the record. It is what it
Yeah.
is. Getting guys back, Hauser, whatever it is. It's just we're in the middle of summer and it's just not good enough. I mean, I don't know what else to say at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not they're certainly playing better. I think that's evident, especially when you go into the weekend series, having swept Seattle. You've won 9 of 11. You have a 6-game winning streak. But I think the weekend was such a reminder of just the reality of where they are with the math, with what their record was on May 24th when you're 16 and 34, right? And you're buried before Memorial Day. A 9 of 11 is a really good stretch. Like that's excellent baseball for going on 2 weeks. But you need to make that 18 of 22, right? You need to make that 20 of 24. I mean, you need to have
The opposite
that
of what the A's just did, right?
right, right, exactly, and that's part of it too. I mean, it was nice to sweep the Mariners. I mean, a good 3-game series there. I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, Adley Rutschman. This is the best. This 6-game stretch is the best Adley Rutschman's looked since last July. I mean, I really do think that walks, hitting the ball with authority, hitting the ball the other way, some extra base hits, hit a couple long balls. I mean, that was good to see. Great to see Colton Cowser come back and hit a ball a country mile on Saturday night. I mean, I don't think that ball's landed yet as they're coming back to town now. But I think the fact that you played an A's team that had lost 20 of 22, and you're thinking when you're having won 6 in a row going into that series, it's Sacramento, that team's in a complete spiral tailspin, as bad if not worse than the Orioles have looked at their worst over the last 3.5 weeks or so, and then you lose 2 out of 3. And I think one thing that we've talked about somewhat, but I think if you really look at the numbers, going back to May 24th when they had begun that stretch of 9 of 11, it's been the pitching leading the way. I mean, the starting rotation's been until this series, and I'll get back to that in a moment. But the starting rotation had been excellent. The bullpen had been excellent. But go look at the offense; it still hadn't been that many great performances. Some timely hits and doing what they needed to do and doing just enough. But it's not as though they were hanging 9 or 10 runs on teams multiple times a week the last few weeks. So you go into this series. We know what offense has looked like in Sacramento at playing in that ballpark. How much of that's the A's pitching or not? I mean, the numbers are the numbers. So you're kind of thinking, okay, even if your pitching, your starting rotation takes a step back, which it did over the weekend. And look, they weren't going to continue to pitch to a starter ERA of 2 in the way that they were for the better part of the last 2 weeks. But it's not as though it was a disaster either. I mean, it's not like Dean Kramer gave up 10 runs. It's not like Sagano gave up 7 runs on Sunday. But they needed their offense to step up in those games. And you're still not seeing that. It answered the bell on Saturday with Charlie Morton looking more like the Charlie Morton of the first 6 weeks of the season. The offense did their job certainly on Saturday night, but you know you got to win 2 out of 3 in a series like this. And if that sounds harsh, and you're saying, "Well, Luke, you're being kind of hard on a team that just had a 4-2 road trip," this is the bed that they made for themselves. So when you have a series that you lose against one of the worst teams in the American League on the heels of having won 9 of 11, it's just a reminder of, man, you just got a long, long, long road ahead of playing out of your mind kind of baseball to really get back on in this thing. And I'm speaking through the looking through the lens of the pathway to be a wild card contender, right? I mean, if we just say it's over, it's over, and you and I don't even have to talk about this, right? I mean, there's still compelling things to talk about with this team, but if we're talking through that, or if we're thinking about it through from that perspective in terms of what they need to do to get back in the neighborhood of being an 85, 86, 87, 88 win team that probably has them right in the thick of the wild card race. I mean, it's just really tough. I mean, at this point, as they come home 26 and 38, you have what, 98 games to go. You go 55 and 43. That's a 91 win pace. That's playing like a 91 win team the rest of the way. Even that only gets them to 81 and 81. So, as much as we kind of view this,
My
yeah,
dad would always do this, by the way. My
right,
dad was a magic number guy, right? So,
sure.
like doing the math on all of it and just saying what has been
It's
done
just
in the history of baseball and what
it's
is
really
possible here,
tough.
and how fast could we drive the car from here to California? Could we? This is a cannonball run at this point when you get behind like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult. It's not impossible, but I think what we have to remember here, whether we're talking about the Orioles or anytime you're talking about pace and what a team's true talent level is, I I think you and I thought, certainly going into the season and even through the first 7 or 8 weeks, we kept saying this team has to be better than this. Like at its worst, they have to be better than this. I mean, the injuries, guys that are missing, guys underperforming, some bad luck mixed in, like all of that. But that said, when you have an outcome that was their first 2 months and you've buried yourself, the math doesn't suggest that you're then, the law of averages said you're then going to play like a 110 win team the rest of the way. You can flip a coin and it can land heads 5 times in a row. As unlikely as that can be, that can happen. That doesn't mean that it's just as likely then that it's going to land 5 times in a row on tails right after that. So that's, I think this weekend was just a little bit of a reality check. Not that they're not playing better, not that I'm completely down on them as badly as I was 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. They are playing better overall and they are getting healthier. We're going to see Jordan Westberg back this week. Kowser's already back. They've got other guys. Laureano's come back and we've seen what impact that he's made. One of the additions that Michael Elias made that actually worked out okay, right? I mean, in the role that he's filled. But this weekend's just a reminder of, I mean, your margin for error is just shot. So when you play a team that had just lost 20 of 22 and then you lose 2 out of 3, you just kind of say, well, okay, now you come home and the best team in baseball is coming into town and you're going to face Tariq Skubal on Thursday and you're going to face the Tigers these next 3. So, hey, good luck there. I mean, so it's really tough. That's why, if you're Tony Mansolino and you're this ball club right now, you really do have to just try to keep it in the present, in the here and now, that night's game, that series. There's no looking ahead. You and I can talk about the math because, we're not in the arena playing, right? We can look ahead. I always talk in those terms. But, it's just, man, it's tough because 4-2, a 4-2 road trip. under normal circumstances. And if this team hadn't played as horrendously as they did for 7 or 8 weeks, you'd be saying, all right, it's a 4-2 road trip. That's fine, right? I mean, you're fine. But man, it's just you've got to make up games. You've got to make up and get closer to 500. And I get it. There's close to 4 months of baseball left. We all understand that, but they just they still have the deficiencies that they have, right? They still have the question marks that they have. The starting rotation's been better the last couple weeks. Doesn't mean I think they're going to pitch like the 1995 Atlanta Braves the rest of the year either. So it's just again, I think this weekend was a little bit of the pump the brakes on and God bless fans. I mean, they're trying to have something to enjoy here. I mean, this is something that was supposed to be fun and it hasn't been fun, but it's just a reminder of man, they have to be so freaking good for so long just to get to a point where you would even talk about, I don't know, 500 or a few games over 500, right? Whatever they would need to be at the trade deadline to have a different discussion there, right? I mean, and it's really tough to do that. And yeah, I mean, the weekend series against the A's, I mean, could have won 2 out of 3. Sunday, I mean, Sagano wasn't good early on, but I mean, they didn't mount any offense. And oh yeah, I don't want to bury the lead here too much. Well, they faced 2 left-handed starters and they lost both those games. So it's just a reminder of, yes, that also is still an issue as we're trying to sift through the good and the bad of a team that, yes, I do genuinely think is playing better. The results reflect that, but still, man, such a long way to go, and they just have so little margin for error to drop 2 out of 3 to an A's team that had just been terrible the last 3.5 weeks.
What'd you make of Sacramento? My buddy Tom Cousins was texting me from the ballpark, and he spent too much on the tickets, and I monitored tickets for $10.
Yeah,
People wanted to go from Sacramento, and the minor league feel of it. Palmer calling the game, just the up all night Friday night. I just I don't know what to say about it, but it feels like just for the sport. When I
yeah.
talk about the sport itself, they go out to Seattle, nobody's there. They go to Sacramento, and it's still like, not the hottest show in town. And I I don't know. What'd you make of it?
I mean, it's funny to say this because so much contributed to what Oakland had become and the atmosphere or lack thereof at the Coliseum had become over the last 20 years, if not longer than that. I mean, you think back to the early 2000s with the Moneyball A's and the run they had then, and they've had some playoff teams since then, over the last 15 years. But just knowing how that situation had crumbled to the degree that it did, let's face it, they were going to the Coliseum in recent years. And I think that looking at the attendance, Friday was announced 8,000, Saturday was 9,000. 8,000 or 9,000 in a minor league ballpark is a better atmosphere than 8 or 9,000 in the Coliseum, which is the way it had become. But I mean, that if that's the bar we're judging on, I mean, it speaks to it's a disaster. It's embarrassing for the league. I mean, more so embarrassing for that ownership and an organization that was such a proud franchise at one point in time. I mean, you think about go back to the late 60s and early 70s. I mean, what the Orioles were at that point in time and what the A's, I mean, 3 straight World Series, the A's of the late 80s and early 90s. And just to think what it's become, the atmosphere itself, it seemed, as minor league AAA ballparks go, it seemed fine, like fun and whatever. I mean, they got the burn and reminds you of spring training in that way. I mean, so yeah, the atmosphere in that regard is fine, but for that to be the three, what's looking like it's going to be the 3-year home of a Major League Baseball team, yeah, it's embarrassing. So, do I think that had any major bearing on like how the Orioles played? And I'm not suggesting your question was hinting at that. No, not really. I mean, you had to bring your own energy to go to Oakland. Anyway, the same thing with playing the Rays in the Dome compared to when they're going to be playing at Steinbrenner Field.
Yeah, and when
It's
Gunnar
just it's
Henderson
just
is
weird.
avoiding tags at the plate, and there's bang bang play. It's
It's a great
baseball.
slide, by the way. Great slide.
Oh, unbelievable,
Oh,
legendary. Yeah, I mean, but I looked at it and I'm like, this
it's so
doesn't
weird.
even this doesn't even smack of anything they should be proud of. You
No.
know?
No, I mean, Major League Baseball in general shouldn't. No, there's nothing to be proud of with that. I mean, let's face it, and this is not exclusive to baseball. I mean, anytime a franchise moves, there's failure there, and and typically multiple parties failing, right? I mean, look,
The Orioles fans could have and should have gone away years ago with Angelos. They didn't. The
sure,
fact that the franchise is still here is a testament to how much free money they gave him with Masson. Because, like, after what the Colts did and whatever, if we were Montreal, we would have had two middle fingers because Montreal just said, good night,
yeah,
goodbye, get out. And
yeah,
if there weren't for Brooks and it weren't for Jim Palmer and it weren't for people who bridge generations here, this thing was so horrifically run. If it
hmm
weren't for bleeding hearts like you that only love it because your father loved it and me because I was born into it. I think about it every day. I think every day, like, what am I doing on second
yeah.
ownership here with these people? Like, what am I doing? Because,
Been a
like,
lot of hate watching
yeah, well,
for
I don't even know
for
about
long
that, but
periods.
then I
Yeah,
see what they do to the fans in Oakland, what this Tampa
yeah,
disaster is, what the people in Colorado are enduring. Even in Houston, where they endured this, then they won and they found that they cheated to win. I mean, like, it's just the whole thing's it's foul, it's smelly, and
and
and then they go to Sacramento, and it's easy to be a jerk on the radio and kick them around or
yeah,
whatever. But we still haven't heard from the owner since they fired the
sure.
manager, and he made a bobblehead a month ago. Like the general manager's on the fly. It just the whole thing, the way the broadcasters broadcast, Ben Wagner with well, they had a really good crowd here the other night, two good crowds on Friday and Saturday. Good crowds. The place seats 12,000 people.
Well, and that's why I said relative to what
It's a
I mean
joke.
that's what Oakland was drawing in recent at bet. I mean, they were drawing less than that.
I mean, ground ball gets up on a guy at first base who has no business being in the big leagues in a minor league park. And Rob Long's in the dugout. And Ben Wagner's talking about the grass and the dirt. And Palmer's like, it's a big league game. He's got to catch the ball. Because Palmer is the only one I can trust. Like, because he doesn't
Yeah,
care. But I mean, for God's sake, it's just you're in last place. Call an error. When you misplay a ball, Gunnar Henderson, that's hit right at you, it's a misplayed ball. And you know who knows it the most? The guy that won 268 games, who was a pitcher who expected you to make that play because Aparicio and Belanger did. No, so did Kiko Garcia, but that's another story.
um, I think going back to the A's part of it. I mean, I hear what we've talked about Masson and all of that so many
No,
times.
it's
I mean,
midnight on a Friday night. Both of
but
these teams are in last place. One of
but
them's lost
but
20
my
out of
point,
22. The
but my
other one's, I mean, and they're playing in a minor league ballpark. And I'm thinking to myself, this is what it is.
I don't know what that means. But this is what it is. I don't
It
know
is
what that
whatever you
means.
think it is.
Okay,
It's
okay.
midnight. I'm awake and I'm
Uh,
watching two last place teams play in a minor league ballpark in a city that doesn't want a team in laundry that used to represent 1973 and Vida Blue and Jim Palmer Catfish. Like it's not that. But I just looked at it and thought, to your point, there's a lot of failure, yeah, all the
sure.
way
But
around with that franchise over the last 25
I
years.
think the shame of it though is how that overshadows Jacob Wilson's hitting 370 right now for them. I mean, like, holy cow! Like, and some of that happens just with small market teams or teams that aren't playing well, right? I mean, but it's kind of wild, right? I mean, you got to watch him up close for a few days here. I'm not sure how many Orioles fans have caught too many A's games so far. I mean, I have MLB TV, and I had seen the A's maybe 3 times all year for parts of games, but I was really impressed. I mean, that play that Denzel Clark made on Friday night, running down that Mateo drive to where he crashed into the wall. It's one of the best plays I've seen in the last couple years. I mean, that was a but phenomenal defensive play. That
As opposed to Dylan Carlson playing a routine fly ball into a
sure, no
double.
question.
Yeah.
But my point is, it's not as though the A's are completely lacking of some really talented players. I mean, I know Mason Miller's had a really rough year, but you and I were talking about him as someone that would be a trade chip. I mean, he throws 103 miles per hour and all that. So
We got them
th-
all in at
th-
5 pitches in the ninth
yeah,
inning on Sunday,
yeah.
right?
I mean, the shame of it is just that when you have talents like that on these teams, and speaking specifically of the A's, because of where they are right now and going to another city. Ballpark's not ready. You've posed plenty of fair questions about how viable it's even going to be in Las Vegas, but yet you have these really talented players that are not being showcased in any way, right? Appropriately, because of what you just laid out. So, and to be clear, and going back to my point about the Orioles losing 2 out of 3 to this team, I mean, the A's hit the ball. I mean, their offense hasn't been their issue. Their pitching has been their issue, and that's why it was disappointing that the Orioles managed 1 run on Sunday
Dude, I'm
on a day
laughing
when,
out loud, and I just got to be interruptive. You and I walked through the Dallas Cowboys training facility a year and a half
yeah,
ago, and that's professional sports, and the Sacramento Athletics are professional. You know what I mean? Like, we're
yeah,
talking about as far away as Manchester United would be from whatever Ryan Reynolds' team was when he found it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, and I don't even know enough about that to make a case of it. But I mean, it really is. It's an amazing thing to think about. We think of them all as being the same logos and professional team. It's just the football
yeah.
thing. They're playing a different. They're just doing
So
something different.
maybe we should try relegation here. I mean, we've talked about that in jest for years now. With whether we're talking baseball or the Cleveland Browns and the NFL. I mean, all that. But I mean, it's certainly. I mean, it's a shame to see something like that because again, you have these players that I mean, think about, and I know they've upgraded some of the stadium to make it better than it had been, I suppose. Again, I'm not that's not patting on the back. That's damning with praise, right? I suppose.
It looks
Uh,
like a spring training
but
stadium.
well, you just see the fact that they're walking out through the left center. They're walking out through the outfield. I mean, this is like something. It was kind of funny because me, I am a total baseball history nerd. And I think back to like the Polo Grounds, which the teams left via the outfield. But I mean, it was the Polo Grounds. It wasn't a baseball only park when it was constructed. And like you see something like this, and you think, wow, this is a major league ballpark for the time being. And it's
And the
just,
team didn't get forced out by famine,
yeah, yeah. I
they
mean,
opted
and
to do this. And this
right, and
is a
that's
quarter of a century after
the
San
Rays at
Juan.
least, yeah, the Rays at least, again, I'll give them a half measure of grace. They've still have screwed the pooch big time in a lot of ways with that situation, but at least the hurricane ripped the roof off the dome down in St. Pete. But this is something that's it's premeditated, right? I mean, this is something that's been years in the making, and this is still the best you come up with. It's crazy to me.
It is
Crazy.
crazy. Luke is here. The Orioles are back playing the Detroit Tigers this week. Go to the infirmary for me here, and
Yeah.
probably a great time as we do a breezy, airy Monday morning piece. How's that Corbin Burns thing working out for you there, champ?
Yeah. Well, everyone breaks. And I don't say that to be I told you so because I was
You had those
reluctant.
warning signs about velocity and
I mean
right.
a little bit. I mean the velo a little, the strikeout rate a little, but this guy's been so durable. But this is why I said, I mean, Garrett Cole was the same way. These guys are durable until they're not anymore. And this is why I do understand when teams say we're not going to give a pitcher a 7 or 8 year deal because he's going to break. Now, I'll say this, even with the Orioles approach that said it, they made a legitimate offer. They average more average annual value than Arizona did. Think about this. They could have signed Corbin Burns to a 4 year deal, and they'd be looking at half the value of that deal being completely thrown away now because he's going to miss most of, if not all of next year, too, at this point in time, with it being June already. So it's a bummer. I like Corbin Burns. I think he's a really cerebral guy. I think he clearly had some conviction as far as how he's handled his career. I mean, he talked about this. He didn't throw bullpens last year in between starts. I mean, that was something that he wanted to do, and the Orioles were okay with it. It's something that I guess he had adapted along the way in Milwaukee. I mean, but he had kept himself healthy. He was a guy who made 32 starts every year, right? I mean, in this day and age, whether that means he's going to go 8 or 9 anymore in the way that you thought of bona fide true aces 30, 40, 50 years ago. Of course, the game's changed in that way. But he was going to go 32 starts and give you six consistently, maybe, and give you seven sometimes here and there. And it was going to be really, really good.
Yeah, in an era where there aren't number ones, he was a real number one.
Yeah, no question, no question. It's a real bummer in that way. And I don't want to dive too far into this because I'll get back to the rest of the infirmary report because there are some notable things that have developed here. But it's just the latest reminder of the industry as a whole, the sport as a whole. Forget about Major League Baseball, just across the board, Major League Baseball on down to the youth level. We continue to chase velocity and spin and more velocity and more spin and more velocity and more spin. These pitchers are just breaking and they're breaking and guys are breaking multiple times now. It used to be, the mindset was you would have Tommy John surgery and okay, you got your Tommy John surgery, you got your new UCL, you're good to go. Hey, go nuts. You're going to be great for the next 10 years. And now we're seeing guys have multiple elbow surgeries, multiple Tommy John surgeries. And we know the return rate for those isn't nearly as clear cut and successful as one Tommy John
Well, you're
tends to
waiting on
be.
Kyle Bradish right now and saying, okay, what are
Well,
we getting here?
that's the thing. Look, I have the confidence that Kyle Bradish will come back and pitch effectively. Felix Batista has pitched effectively. Do I have the confidence that Felix Batista is going to stay healthy now for the next 7 years? I don't know. Not really. Just in a general sense, not because of Felix or anything about him
Well, there's
specifically.
science out there on that now, right? 20
I
years
mean,
into this surgery, really.
there is, but you'd like to
It
see
is
more.
individual. It
You'd
could
like
be
to see more science to keep these guys healthy to begin with, though.
right.
That's what I'm talking about here. And I mean, I don't know. And believe me, I am not going to sit here and act like I, thump my chest and say that I know what the solution is because I don't.
Well,
Because
in
I
the
also,
sport, I remember back when everybody was juicing and using steroids. If you weren't cheating, you weren't trying, right? And
yeah,
now it's like if you don't have the spin, if you
you're
don't
not going to
have
be as
the
good
stuff,
usually.
you're not. If you're throwing 86 and you're 19 years old, you're not a big league pitcher.
Right, right. Sunday wasn't the best example of it because he struggled, but Sagano, we've seen what he's been coming over from Japan. I mean, I've talked about this a lot, and I still feel it to a degree because he doesn't miss a ton of bats, and you see if his command's not as sharp, he gets knocked around a little bit more. Now he's got six pitches, he's got 14 years or however many
And
years he
he's
pitched in
also
Japan.
not max effort. He's not out throwing 98
Right,
every pitch
but
either.
he is the extreme exception now
Sure.
in the game, and I don't know what the perfect solution is because, and I don't say this to be morbid, but you think back to NASCAR, and when Dale Earnhardt was killed in the Daytona 500, what did they do? They put restrictor plates. They started different safety measures, restrictor plates. The cars couldn't go as fast, right? And that meant more safety, improved levels of safety. And no one, thank goodness, I'm not a NASCAR guy, but thank goodness no one has been killed in a NASCAR race since then. We're going on what that was 2001,
It was
right around the
25 years ago.
yeah.
I was on the
So
radio that night. The Hans device. I can,
right,
I
but
had to do a
there's
lot of quick Google that night on the
no
radio.
no question, no question. Again, I've thought of that as I can't come up with a better example because there's no restrictor plate for a pitcher's arm, right? I mean, I know some people have talked about maybe adding a little bit of weight to the baseball, and maybe that would. There's even because the pitchers do training with weighted base. They're not weighted baseballs or weighted balls. They do different training, and there's been different thoughts as far as the safety of that. Maybe there's not as much torque because there's a little more weight. I don't know. Again, I'm spitballing here, stream of consciousness wise, but man, it's just. I mean, this year, no Garrett Cole, no Corbin Burns. I mean,
Well,
that
I would say
stinks.
this to you. I mean, I've been doing
And
this
and, a, and a,
35
an abundance
years.
of others too, mind you,
Yeah,
but
you like
two big
the
names there.
injury report for football was very common,
Yeah,
right? There was an injury report, probable, questionable. Back before Chad Steele was the purveyor of news, there was a real injury report. The Broncos always cheated when they had Shanahan. This is 25 years ago. Um, the baseball injury report was a negligible. It wasn't like a part of our shtick here. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like in the course of humanity of the Orioles, they would have 3 to 6 to 8 injuries here and again, 15-man DL, 15-day DL,
Yeah.
whatever. Sometimes there'd be a 60-day DL. Sometimes bad things would happen, and Tommy and John would come and visit and whatnot. But the injury list now, I just ask you for the infirmary report for the
Yeah.
franchise because it's thicker than week 6 in a Ravens week when they're playing the Bengals.
Yeah, it is. And look, I think there are multiple things at work there. I mean, we've obviously the pitching is the big one that's at the forefront of the
It's
discussion
almost
and the
like
concern.
quarterbacks and concussions or something, right? Like
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's tough for me to really try
it's
to.
an epidemic,
Yeah,
is what I'm
it
saying.
is, and I don't.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know what the perfect solution is. I really don't, because let's face it, the the pitcher injuries have really taken off the last 10 years or so, but it was trending that way longer than that. It's become more
But
in your
once it starts
face now.
costing you Strasburg and
Sure. I mean,
that,
it
right?
stinks. I mean, like it stinks. So a couple things at work here. One, I do think players pitched and played through more ailments in the past. As I've said to you, and we've talked about this plenty of times, there were plenty of pitchers who had career-ending arm injuries back in the 60s and 70s. They got hurt and then you never heard from them again. Whereas now guys do come back from Tommy John or shoulder surgery, different things like that. They might not be the same, even though many times they are. So there's that. Obviously, there's a lot of people have talked about with pitching in general, just the specialization of the sport. And this probably dips more so down into the youth levels and the high school level, where, I mean, you have so many guys that play a sport year round, whereas you used to have the star pitcher. Well, he'd play basketball in the winter. He wouldn't be going to drive line or some specialty coach or something and just working out all winter. He'd be playing basketball. And in the fall, he wouldn't be playing fall baseball. He'd be the quarterback for his high school team, right? So there's some of that at work. But I it's funny because that we've seen it not so much with the Orioles this year, but we've seen years where obliques, you used to never hear of obliques and stuff like that 30 or 40 years ago. And some of it is we're we like to think of ourselves as more distinguished how we talk about these things, which probably is true in some circles, but not nearly to the degree that we think. But I don't know. Some of it almost goes back to the whole steroid mindset where, if baseball players were too muscular, it was a lot of strain and stress on their joints and they'd get hurt more often. I don't know. But I do think sometimes teams are a little more apt to, if a guy has a sore hamstring, to put him on the IL for 10 days rather than nurse his way through it, play less than 100%. I think there's a little bit of that. I mean, we see that in the NBA big time with load management, right? I mean, compared to guys playing
Well,
82
there is a point
games.
where you have another guy that can come up and play who is
And there's some
100%.
of
Why
that
run him
too.
out there?
Yeah.
Get him back at 100%. That's
Yeah.
all.
So I think that's part of it. Like, I don't think it's, I think there's nuance to this. I think there are layers to it, but, to your, to go back to your original question, and I'll run it down. Uh, they've had so many injuries, and I saw it. I cited this with you. This was probably about a month ago, so I don't know if it's how accurate it is now, but I know it was back in the month of May. Will Carroll, who's someone who used to write for Sports Illustrated, he has sports injury and more specifically a baseball injury Substack that he still does. I subscribe to it,
I should
and
get him on the show. He's an old friend of
he,
the station. Yeah.
yeah. It was about a month ago he he had cited someone that he trusted. He hadn't verified it 100%, but he did the rough math and knew that it was close enough that half the players in baseball, and when we say that, I guess we're assuming 40-man roster, all that, right? I mean, obviously, half the players in baseball were on the IL. When you think about it, the 40-man rosters for all the teams across baseball, roughly, or not sorry, not half, a quarter of the players, and I think I said half, sorry, a quarter of the players in 40-man rosters in baseball were on the IL at that point in time. Now, that number may have improved slightly, may have gotten worse. I mean, who knows?
That's 10
But
on every franchise
that's
out of the 40.
insane. Like, that is absolutely insane when
So
you
what
think
the
about that.
Orioles have is not insane. It's typical.
Um, I don't know. See, I don't know if that counted 60-day IL as well.
Well, I'm just going through. Well,
but
right. Some of the
just
guys that they have that
crazy.
are
But
really
that's a crazy number when you think
sure.
about that. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. Look at the Dodgers the last 2 years, and look, the Dodgers spend more money than anyone. We all understand that, right? I mean, it's our most recent discussion. We talked about the uneven playing field. We talked a lot about that, but look how many injuries the Dodgers have even had, where not just do they spend money, but they're also regarded as being really smart and really good, and they have a great farm system and a brilliant general manager and front office. And yet they had all those injuries and they can't keep pitchers healthy. And so you just see all this, and it's just like, wow. I mean, I've said this for a while now, and again, easier said than done. It's kind of a Captain Obvious statement, but the next frontier, when you think in terms of like Moneyball or infield shifting, or what in most recent years the chase for velocity and more spin. The next frontier for a team to gain a competitive advantage is, wow, if you find some cutting edge sports science, sports medicine that can keep players healthier, and you have not, you're never going to eliminate arm injuries. I mean, arm injuries have existed since pitchers existed. But at this alarming rate that continues to get worse and worse and worse, if you can find something
Well, you got a hillbilly pitching
proprietary.
coach like Leo Mazzoni that never got guys hurt and had a certain system, and nobody would listen to him because he
Yeah,
wasn't a scientist, right?
or maybe it's just a team that says, you know what, we're going to lean way, way, way harder into command rather than stuff. I'll say this, and look, it hasn't worked out, so don't. This is not me patting Michael Elias on the back, obviously. Kind of, sort of low key, the Orioles tried to do that a little bit with Zach Eflin and with Sagano, who doesn't walk. He had, even in a bad start on Sunday, he walked one, I think. You look at his walk rate. Look at Eflin's career walk rate. These aren't great,
Availability is your best ability, right?
but even then, I mean, Eflin was hurt and missed a month, right? So I don't know. It's crazy, but infirmary report. Big one I want to mention. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. And certainly we sent out the WNST Baltimore positive text alert on Friday. We found out Ryan Mountcastle, 8 to 12 weeks with a grade 2 hamstring strain. I mean, that takes him into August at the earliest. We're going to see him back. So for me, and I wrote this at BaltimorePositive.com, Kobe Mayo, this is your chance. This is your opportunity. This is a time where I'm not saying he's necessarily going to play every single day at first base, because I think we'll see Ryan O'Hearn get more starts at first base in addition to DH. And
Well, he gets 2 hits today and 3 hits tomorrow, and like that's how you stay in the lineup,
yeah,
right?
well, and I'll say this. I mean, Mayo, look, he still has a long way to go. I'm not saying that he's looked great since returning. He has looked a little bit better. Fewer strikeouts. I think he's had more competitive at bats. He had a he's had a couple hits. Whereas, I mean, go look at his numbers from last summer. Go look at his numbers for that very brief cup of coffee he had earlier this year. For Kobe Mayo, I'll say this much: take better advantage of your opportunity than Heston Kjerstad did the first 2 months of the season when Colton Cowser was out. I mean, Kjerstad, Tyler O'Neill's going to be back here in the not too distant future. We'll save the punchline of how for how long, but
And
you know,
Mullins too.
yeah,
You
Mullen's
know,
going to be back. So, Kjerstad might find his way back in the minors at this point in time. So if you're Kobe Mayo, knowing that Mountcastle is going to be out of the picture, not really. I mean, what else is he going to prove at AAA? I know he can't
they're a
necessarily
last
play.
place team, and
I
they need
mean,
at bats,
if
right?
he can be good enough, if he can flash enough, if he can, I'm not saying it has to be a 290 average with 25 bombs. Hit 200 for the time being. Like, at least be competitive. Be a functional major leaguer where, hey, you're starting to hit the ball with more authority. You've cut down on the strikeouts, which he has since being recalled here last weekend.
Hit a
I
home
want
run
to see
twice a
that.
week.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, he's got to start somewhere. So that with Mountcastle being out, and we know Mountcastle was struggling mightily. I mean, yeah, they'll miss his defense at first base. To your point, I mean, Emmanuel Rivera, who I'm guessing is going to be DFA'd this week. My prediction is, with some of these guys coming back here in the coming days, he's going to be one of the guys to go, because you know he's the prototypical quad A player. Came up last year, did a nice job for a few weeks. I give him credit, but this is kind of who he is. The more he plays, the more he's exposed that he doesn't really belong in the majors. So, but with Kobe Mayo, give him starts at first base. I mean, I know they've been working big time with him on his defense. Junk the whole third base thing. He's not a major league third baseman. Let's just stop with that. Play him at first base, DH him. He doesn't have to play every single game, but he should be in there way more days than not at this point. To your point, it's the last place team right now, and if they're going to forget about getting back into it this year, if they're going to just be trending in the right direction again as 25 goes on and as we start looking more and more towards next year, Kobe Mayo starting to look like he's figuring it out, and some of these other young players getting themselves back on track and moving in the right direction. I mean, I mentioned Adley Rutschman's looked. This is the most he's looked like Adley Rutschman this last week, in a long time, in my opinion. So you want to continue to see that, but it's all about this young core, getting these guys back on track. And I'm not saying they're all going to. I mean, it might be that Heston Kjerstad isn't going to figure it out. Kobe Mayo may not figure it out. I mean, if Adley Rutschman goes right back into a slump again after this good week, then at some point we're going to have to say this might be who he is now. I'm not ready to say that yet, but the evidence has to be there. So in the case of Mayo, I want to see him play. I mean, Jordan Westburg's going to be back. Jordan Westburg play third base. Arias will play a little here and there, but Arias is a bench player now. I mean, Jackson Holliday's an everyday player now. Gunnar Henderson, everyday player, obviously. So, you know, it, I so much prefer seeing those guys, even if they're going to take their licks, even if Kobe Mayo's still going to scuffle, right? Even if some of these other guys are still going to scuffle.
Well, I mean, I've
Gunnar,
seen Laureano batting cleanup on Sunday,
yeah,
right?
and look, I mean that's fine, and Laureano's played well. I look if you can get a couple lottery tickets for him at the trade deadline, by all means, fine. That's no problem. But for me to really feel better about this organization, it's about those young guys figuring it out and turning the corner and looking better again over the next few weeks or a few months. Gunnar Henderson, his season's been fine overall. Gunnar Henderson's not hitting left-handed pitching at all. Uh, and that's not to say he was ever phenomenal at it, but he certainly was better than he's been this year. So, I mean, the lefty starter thing, I mean, my goodness, they got to figure this out. I mean, I've said this tongue in cheek, but they look like lefty pitchers are aliens to them. I mean, it's just, they can't figure it out. It's
They have no
completely,
productivity against left-handed
oh, their
pitching.
lefty numbers are terrible. I saw Jacob Calvin Meyer of the Sun posted. He had Randy Johnson. It was one of Randy Johnson's Cy Young years. Obviously, Randy Johnson, one of the greatest pitchers of all time, one of the greatest left-handers of all time. And he talked. He posted what the slash line was for opposing hitters against Randy Johnson. I think it was 1 year, might have been his career, whatever it was. And the Orioles' total numbers against left-handed pitching this year almost identical to what those numbers were for the league
Every
facing Randy
left-hander's Randy
Johnson.
Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, come on. So that's where we said, hey, they are playing better, and they are playing better. But boy, they still got a long way to go. I want to see Mayo playing. Jordan Westburg's going to be back. Cows are being back's a good thing. I mean, these are good things. I mean, there are good things happening, but as it pertains to the win-loss record, standings, wild card, I mean, they have such a long, long, long way to go to play superb baseball. And that's where you look at this series and say, the A's were woeful going into this weekend, and you lost 2 out of 3 to them. It just speaks to that you can't afford to lose to do that if you're going to try to climb back into this thing here over the next couple months.
Tigers in and the Angels. The Halos on Friday. We'll be down at Fadley's on Friday. Giving away the Back to the Future scratch-offs from the Maryland Lottery. Luke's going to join me on Friday. I think Katie Pumphrey's going to be there and some others. We have 16 different Maryland Crab Cake Tour stops we're lining up. Big thanks to my friend Darren down at Di Pasquale's for the most delicious sausage. Had it with some linguine, some fresh linguine, some amici sauce. Oh, we're going to do the crab cake tour down at Di Pasquale's one day, too. Joe told me he had a crab cake down there. So, yeah, if you got a crab cake, I'm there for it. Believe me. Folks at Readers are going to find that at 1623 Brewing. We're getting around the Beltway inside and outside. We're celebrating 27 years. I'm going to have my 27th anniversary. I don't Know what I'm gonna do for that. Might be maybe I'll do like a donut or peach cake or something like that. He's Luke. I am Nestor. The Orioles are still losing, and we're still here to talk about it. Damn it. We are Baltimore positive. Stay with us.